there's lots to get to. Let's get to it first. We got to start with this fiscal update. Now, this is painful. This is painful. I'm going to show you the first 10 seconds to illustrate how painful this is. I watched this in 2 times speed, and it was painful there. And then we'll jump forward to the part where she says Canada isn't broken. It's interesting that they're using the rhetoric of their opponent, so the rhetoric of Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative Party of Canada in their economic update, and directly trying to take that down. But like when Hillary Clinton said, "Love Trump's hate," like you don't put your opponent's name in your central tagline, and really you don't use your opponent's taglines in your fiscal update. It's weird. So it sets up a battle, and Viva Frei takes her up on this as well. Here is the first painful 10 seconds. It is so painful. Chrystia Freeland's speech. Here we go.
Building a Canada that delivers.
It's too fast. Hold on. Here it is again.
Building a Canada that delivers on the promise of the greatest country in the world.
It's painful. It is painful to get through, and she's not a good speaker. She's annoying. Very, very annoying. This is exactly where I need to be. This is when she says Canada is not broken. Here we go.
Canada is not and never has been broken.
So the housing prices and the grocery prices and the gas prices that are caused by bad policies that you keep championing are a feature, not a bug. It's not broken. You meant to do that? Huh. Chrystia Freeland says Canada is not and never has been broken. And Viva Frei says Canada is broken and you broke it, you filthy communist. That's not me. That's Viva Frei. And you will know how many people feel the same way because this reply will absolutely ratio your repulsive tweet. You destroyed Canada and history will remember you accordingly. Well, so far she's writing the history books. She's in fact working for the end of history, if you know what that is. And so Viva Frei may be right, but also Chrystia Freeland may not be worried about that because she's playing a very, very different game. She's not playing a typical politics game, I don't think. It's interesting. He's right. He's got 5,500 likes and she's got 4,600 likes. And so she's getting ratioed, but the liberal bots minimize that damage. Chrystia Freeland carries on after saying Canada is not broken. She says, we are the imperfect but remarkable creation of generations of Canadians who did their part to build a better country in good times and in tough times, calloused hands by calloused hand. Generations of Canadians who fought fear and cynicism with hope and hard work. Generations of Canadians who fought day after day to keep Canada moving forward, and generations of Canadians who believe, just as I do today, that better is always possible. So the rhetoric is one thing, but the reality is a vastly different thing. Look at that face. Do you trust that face with your finances? If you walked in and your financial advisor looked like that, you would walk right back out the door. Maxime Bernier responds to this. The main takeaway from Chrystia Freeland's fiscal update, quote, there is no plan to return to balanced budget with the deficit projections to fall from 40 billion this year to 18.4 billion in 2028-29. 2028 or 29? Wow, that's a long, long time away. More tens of billions of dollars irresponsibly added to our national debt after years of reckless spending at a time when the world economy is teetering on the brink of a recession and a major sovereign debt crisis in the US, Japan, and elsewhere threatens global financial stability. What a bunch of economic illiterates these liberals are. They simply don't understand the concept of prudent management. All they know is how to throw money out the window. And no, the budget won't balance itself. No, of course not. Of course not. Here is Mr. Poilievre responding to this fiscal update, and he uses it to push his brand. The entire everybody in the legislature at this point in time in the House of Commons kind of chimes in, and they all sing-song it together at the end. It's really, I mean, on one side it's branding. On the other side, the liberal media have lost their minds. I'll show you that in a little while. I don't want to take us off track from what I'm trying to show you here with the fiscal update. So Poilievre responding to the fiscal update. Here we go.
I don't think this debate is going how they expected it to go. Their heads are all looking down, and rightfully so, Mr. Speaker. It will be a good moment for them to atone for the cynical approach they've taken on this and everything else, and frankly, the misery that they have unleashed in this country. This is the worst time in Canada's history for the Canadian people, particularly for the middle class. But the good news is we have a common sense plan that will axe the tax to bring home lower prices, cap spending and cut waste to bring down inflation and interest rates, remove bureaucracy to build more homes so that once again people can afford to rent and pay their mortgages. This will be a country that works for the people who do the work, the common people, the common sense of the common people, united for our common home. Your home, my home, our home. Let's bring it home.
So that's different, right? Like, are you noticing the difference? I've noticed the difference, and that is a big difference from the previous Conservative Party. And we're going to talk about how much the Liberals are losing their mind on this. Chrystia Freeland and her red dress, and the red dress fits about as well as the economic update, which is to say that it very, very poorly, very, very poorly indeed. Nick says, elect a drama teacher and a journalist. What could go wrong? A lot. Freeland and Trudeau now predict interest on their debt will be $52.4 billion in 2024, $58.4 billion in 2027, and $60.7 billion in 2028. That's double the military budget. Yikes. And I heard also that interest rates are higher than health transfers. Yikes. That's not good. I chuckle, but it's not good. Here is CPAC, and this is Jagmeet Singh. And hold on a second. There's another one that goes with Jagmeet Singh's. Here is Jagmeet Singh's statement on the fiscal update. Here we go.
So I want to talk about the needs. We've been hearing so many stories from Canadians. We're at a time when people cannot afford to find a place to call home. And if you've got a home, people are living in fear that they're going to lose it. And I remember so many stories that I've heard, but most recently in Toronto, I was speaking with a woman who has a place right now. And she's been talking to her neighbors, and her neighbors are seeing big increases in the rent. She knows some of them who've been rent evicted or dem evicted, and she lives in constant fear that if her rent goes up or if she ends up losing this place, there is nowhere else out there for her to live. Given how serious that is, that people cannot find housing that they can afford, that people are not living in housing that's adequate for their family's needs, given how bad it is right now with housing, what the Liberal government has announced is not a budget, obviously. It's not even a mini budget. It is a micro budget. It does not meet the urgency of what Canadians are going through. It doesn't really meet their needs. And it's another example where Canadians are feeling really disappointed about the Liberals not meeting the urgency of what they're going through. And most of the money that they're promising is delayed for off into the future.
So not good enough. Not nearly good enough, says Jagmeet Singh. What are you doing? It's like you don't even care. And then somebody says, so does this cast your support, the only thing propping up this Liberal government, in a different light? Oh no, says Jagmeet Singh. I've got a pension to get. Are you kidding me? LOL, he says.
Today's statement affect how you view the supply and confidence agreement? Do you still support the government based on this fiscal update?
So far, we're going to continue to work to get Canadians help and use our power the way we have been.
So he's going to continue supporting the Liberals. He's not going to use his power as the balance of power to bring these Liberals down because their economic update isn't good enough for Canadians at all. He says it's not a mini budget. It's not even a micro budget, right? It's not enough. It's insufficient. Are you going to keep propping them up? Yes. Next question. What? That's crazy. I mean, it's crazy, but it's not unexpected, right? I'm not surprised by this, just disappointed. Here, let's talk more about housing, right? Here is one of the, who is this? How did we let this happen? This is one of the most disgusting things that I could imagine happening in Canada. So CAF, Canadian Armed Forces members, are going to different resources to help find housing, and they're failing. And people who are currently serving in the Canadian Forces right now are living in their cars because they're being posted to places where they can't afford rent. They can't afford to live. And so they're living in their cars. We're doing that in Canada, and that's not good, right? To understate it, here we go.
You're telling me that inflation is so bad in Canada that active current members of our Canadian Armed Forces cannot afford the cost of living and are having to come to you for help.
That is correct. And I can also tell you that we have active, currently serving members of the Canadian Armed Forces living in cars. The housing crisis is such that we have, over the past year, seen 3 veterans who have been posted to areas where they cannot afford housing and are living in their cars. So getting ready for work in the morning, putting their uniform on, and going to work in Canadian Armed Forces. So yes, that is in fact very real.
What a wild place for Canada to be, right? We're a rich country with resources, et cetera, and the federal government does not want to focus on helping our military, our active military, veterans and active military. My goodness, people being posted would be active. Maybe veterans are being reposted. That was also, she was from, oops, sorry about that. Oh, goodness me. I'm clicking all the wrong things. She was also, her name was Debbie Lothar, and she's a Veterans Emergency Transition Service, right? So she would know. She's somebody who's involved in this. Shazi says, skyrocketing rents in Canada are more than just numbers. They're a dire warning of an affordability crisis that's squeezing out the average family. A 34% hike in 2.5 years. That's an incredibly big increase, and that is not acceptable. And here is where Chrystia Freeland's focus is. It is not on Canada, and it is shameful. Here's Freeland.
We're able to attract immigrants. We need to build the homes for those immigrants, and we're doing it. We're able.
Really? What about the 34% rent increase in the last little while for Canadians, right? Jeepers creepers. Chrystia Freeland is addressing this housing issue again in her financial fiscal update to protect Canadians who are struggling with their mortgage payments at a time of higher interest rates. Today, I'm announcing a new Canadian mortgage charter. The Canadian Mortgage Charter details the tailored mortgage relief that Canadians need and expect from their banks if they're in financial difficulty. Our goal is to make sure Canadians have the support they need to afford their mortgages and keep their homes when renewing at a time of higher interest rates. So they're not going to change their fiscal policies in order to bring down the rates so that we don't have to change anything so that the bank rules still work. No, they're pressuring banks to change the rules so that they can give breaks for people who need breaks in order to make the ends meet and not lose their house. But don't give breaks to people who can afford it, basically. And so more redistribution of wealth, more taking from people who have quite a lot and attempting to give to people who don't have enough. But all of that inequality is driven by their bad policies. Their bad policies are to blame at core, at base. And they shouldn't be allowed to get away with this. Look at this. This is Russell Brand sharing this. And the WEF wants people to open up their backyards to pods so the pods can house people, I guess. These pods, unlike the shantytown ghetto slums that were being built in I think Kitchener has one. I don't know this. I don't know if the units in Kitchener have bathrooms or running water or anything like that in the unit, but the units I saw do not have that. They have a block of 5 toilets for 30 houses, which seems like not a great idea. What do you think you get when you add 30 rooms with no sink or toilet, plus 5 bathrooms, plus 30 people with mental health disorders and or homeless people? Right? Like if you put cameras in there, you've got a YouTube show that would get banned really quick, right? If somebody did that, they'd be saying, you're exploiting these homeless people. And other people would say, we're giving them housing, right? Bum fights were a thing. Honestly, my friend told me about bum fights and I didn't believe that was real. And then I went back to the internet back in oh my goodness. No, it was probably 2005 or something like that. Maybe it was even before that. And I looked up bum fights and I couldn't believe that it was real. And I was like, how in the world does this happen? Just, people going up, giving people money to fight each other and filming it and putting it up on the internet. The world is a crazy place. But regardless, you shouldn't exploit people like that. You shouldn't exploit people like that in bum fights. And you shouldn't create circumstances that will lead to conflict. And just the existence of that ghetto, of that grouping of 30 houses and 5 bathrooms or whatever it is, even if you double that to 10, it's still not enough. You're going to have conflict. Somebody's going to take too long. Somebody's going to sleep there. Somebody's going to pass out there. It's going to be disgusting. Also, if I was walking by and really had to go to the bathroom, I'd be like, I'm not going in there. I'm going to keep walking. Okay, here is what the WEF says about backyard slums that they want you to build with pods. These pods have plumbing. There you go. Here is, and it's got lots of beeps and boops. So maybe I'll mute that. I'll turn that down because it's just beeps and boops. There's nothing else. So I'll mute that and I'll read what this says. Here we go. It says, the project will host people in pods placed in people's backyards. 200 people have said they are interested in having pods in their gardens. 200 whole people? This one looks like a shed. It does not look like a pod that you would have one man and two women, that you would have 3 people, a parent and 2 children, one parent and 2 children. Why that? Because screw the nuclear family, says the WEF. Anyway, 200 people have said they're interested. So obviously we have to go forward with this. Consensus wins. 100% of these 200 people say they want this, so you have to do it. What? Carrying on. 200 people. Ridiculous. Each pod is 18.5 square meters and will be able to house 1 adult and 2 children. They'll be furnished and come with full plumbing. Ooh, full plumbing. Great. People living in the pods will pay rent at a reduced rate. Whose reduced rate? How do they come up with the reduced rate? Don't the people whose backyards they're living in, that is undeniably a 666. Don't the people whose backyards they're living in get to say what the rent is? Not like the WEF. Ooh, here's your pod and your reduced rent, right? Like, oh yeah, well today reduced rent is $2,500 because reasons. It's plumbed, right? Do you want to live in the slum that only has 5 bathrooms and doesn't have a sink in your unit? Come on, right? $2,500 is a deal. It's wild that they're asking people to do this, and also asking people to subsidize other people who can't afford anything because these idiots keep sending all the money to Ukraine or Israel or all of it, right? Let's talk about a media bailout that's also packaged up in this fiscal update. Michael Geist says this is just a massive bailout using public dollars for the government's blunder on Bill C-18. News outlets could previously claim a max of $13,750 per employee. That's now increased to $29,750 or by 116%. Taxpayer cost estimated at $120 million in the next 3 years alone. So this is the Canadian journalism labor tax credit. Wow. The Canadian journalism labor tax credit, which is introduced in Budget 2019 as one of several measures to support Canadian journalism. It provides a refundable 25% tax credit on the salary or wages paid to eligible newsroom employees of a qualifying journalism organization. Qualifying labor expenditures per eligible newsroom employee are capped at $55,000 for a taxation year. So all of these people printing propaganda, it's because they directly work for the government. Without the government, their job doesn't exist. So all of a sudden, the lens shifts, right? They have a reason to be actively pushing what the government says, because without them, well, their job's gone because they're liars and they're pushing what the government says. Kean says, insanity, the new Trudeau budget announces that he will use government funds to personally cover 35% of all journalists' salaries in Canada. The counter signal will not be accepting this for our reporters, editors, or videographers. We don't need this. So that's interesting for Kean and good for him. And I don't think that he would be I don't think that he would qualify. Honestly, I don't think that he would qualify. Oh, sorry, I didn't realize I wasn't on the screen. Because that's Kean. And if the government saw his name, they would be like, nope, next. So anyway, regardless, these subsidies are meant to buy the content, really, right? Buy the journalists, buy the content, buy the whole kit and caboodle. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful